Hey guys, Dylan from Noble Records coming at you with another video. So as you can see, I still have all my records here, but I actually have sold my records, all my records, 3 times in my life. I was going through some old photos today and remembering some of those times, and I thought I'd make a video about it. It's a really interesting concept, the psychology behind record collecting anyways, but especially behind when you get to a point to where you feel like you need to sell your record. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and follow us on Instagram. That helps us keep the channel going, lets us know that you're interested in the content. And however you feel about this video, leave us a comment. We really love to hear from you guys and get to know our viewers. So basically I started collecting records when I was 10 years old. So I started amassing a collection then, and that went through high school and I went through college, and then when I got married, I don't know if you guys, any of you have been married, know that's such a dramatic life change for you at that point that you really start reevaluating your whole life, what's important, what's not important. And I had a job where I was making $1,000 a month. This was way back in 2010, but I was making $1,000 a month. And my wife was looking for a job. She was out of work, and it was just a really tough time financially, and then also just trying to figure out how to do life as an adult. You know, I'd moved out. I'd lived in an apartment for a few months before we got married on our own, but just really understanding how to become an adult and how all that stuff works was really tough for me. So I started selling things off that weren't necessarily as important for me at the time, and my turntable had broken. I just didn't have a lot of records at the time. That my musical taste had changed a little bit, and most of what I was listening to at that time wasn't on vinyl. So it was just one of those times to where I got all my records out. We didn't have a lot of space, so I put them up on Craigslist and sold them. And looking back on that time, you know, there were some things in that original collection that I wish I had kept that I might never ever see again. But I kept maybe one small crate of records, probably 50 records. But other than that, sold every one of them and got enough money to just kind of keep going, you know. And immediately pulling all those records out, and I knew I had to sell them. I knew that was the time of my life. I started remembering all the places I got those records. All that stuff started rushing back to me, and I got the record bug again. I mean, they had been on my shelf in my bedroom while I was off at college. Hadn't really thought much about them, and just sitting there going through them again just maybe made my mind click back to all the times that I'd went out looking for these records, and all the time I put in. You know, I'd put in 10 years to find all these records. I had about 1,000 records at that time. So anyways, slowly but surely, you know, I started going around, sneaking around to Goodwills and thrift stores and things like that to reacquire my old collection to get those things back. And you know, my wife, I would always tell her, like, hey, you know, remember all the money we made on those records? Well, I can buy more records and sell them again now that I know what I'm doing. And that was kind of my excuse. I've told my history with records 1,000 times, so if you've seen any of my old videos, I did one of maybe 5 or 6, 7 videos back talking about how records changed my life. In that video, I go into depth on the history of how we got to where we are now with the shop and everything, but I won't go into that. If you want to hear that story, go back and watch a few videos. So the second time I sold my collection, well, I had been married for about 6 years at this time. So fast forward 6 years, and during that 6 years I did a lot of damage, collected a lot of records. I had probably 1,500 to 2,000 records. I had been buying and selling. It was kind of, you know, my business. I'd already called it Noble Records and all that stuff, and I sold on eBay some. And so, you know, it was a very huge passion of mine at the time. We had our first son. His name's Noble. When he was about 3 years old, he was diagnosed with autism, and so that was another moment in my life, a huge moment to where I started reevaluating things. Money became tighter just because I needed to stay home from work more. I had a job at the time that I was working swing shifts. Some of the shifts were night shifts, and it became increasingly hard for me to be away from the home. It interrupted his sleep schedule. He had a really hard time with me leaving and being gone all night. And so it messed everything up. It threw a wrench in all the gears of his therapy and all that stuff. And so I saw a quick solution to make some money so I can recalibrate and find another job. And so I started selling off my records. And I even had a post on Instagram. You know, at that time I think I had like 10,000 Instagram followers. So I had people that knew me and knew about my collection and what I had. And so a lot of people bought stuff, you know, that they'd seen in my collection. And I ended up selling down to, again, about 50 to 100 records. So sold almost everything. But, you know, in that moment, I just realized that I needed that money to figure my life out for my family. And it wasn't even necessarily something that I look back on as a sad thing, but it was a time to where I had the records, and I was able to use them as a tool to figure my life out. So I did sell just about everything I had. Just maybe a crate or two that I really held near and dear to my heart, that I loved. And then I just spent the next few years just trying to figure life out, you know, as life changed and, you know, my son developed. I noticed different needs for him, and I had another son right before he was diagnosed with autism. We actually had another baby, and so I had another son. His name's Cannon. So it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, where, you know, this threw a big wrench in the gears of what I thought my life would look like. And I started exploring careers and jobs so I could work from home more and I could spend more time with my family, because I needed that one-on-one time with my son. I needed to be more of a presence in the home so I could help him, and, you know, give my other son as much attention as he needed as well. So that was my whole reason behind that next few years of wandering. You know, I worked a bunch of different jobs trying to figure out what would work best, and ultimately I collected records again. You know, it's a sickness we have. We can't stop. So one of the main sources of income that I had was doing pop-up shops. From then on, I did these pop-up shops at like coffee shops, breweries, stuff like that. So that was where I would make my side hustle money to make ends meet, really. So that was the one constant thing from 2010 to now that I've always sold records. It's the only thing I've ever done consistently as a job. And so I did that on the side. It wasn't enough money to live off of, but it was good to have that as a resource. So I was always buying collections and stuff. And when you do that and you're a collector, you know, you end up picking up and amassing more records. So I ended up getting more and more records. And then by 2019, so that was a few years later, I had about 2,000 records, and I was proud of my collection. I'd started collecting psychedelic rock, which is one of my main things, and I had a really solid collection, really good stuff. I was stoked for where my collection was at. I remember sitting back and thinking, I almost have everything that I want, and that never happens when you're a collector, but for me it did. And so I found a job that I was working and that I felt like I was doing pretty good at. I enjoyed it, but as I sold records more and I realized in my life I really wanted to do that. I really wanted to have a record shop. I was scared to say it out loud, really, because I knew I probably couldn't do it. I knew that it would be too hard, and I'm not smart enough. I didn't go to school for business. I didn't think I had what it took to open a record store. I had a lot of doubt in myself, but my wife really encouraged me, and she's like, you can do this. If anybody can do this, you can do this. And she really pushed me to do it. And as we were trying to figure out how I would transition out of the job that I had into doing that, it was a scary, scary move. I got laid off. So that kind of fixed that whole problem for us. And we found a spot. We got it to work, but the problem was then I had the inventory that I was using for my pop-ups, but that wasn't really that much. It was a couple thousand records. So I had to use all my records in my collection, and I had to sell all my collection into the record. I put it all in the shop to start the record store. And so, we didn't take out loans or anything like that. I just used what I had. I heard this story about Mother Teresa. and how she wanted to start a school, and all she didn't have anything, all she had was a stick, and so she was writing letters in the dirt to teach kids how to read. And you know, she said that's how she started, with a stick. That's all she had, so that's what she started with. And I thought, that's all you got to do, is start with what you have and multiply that into bigger things. And so that's been our whole goal as having a record store, is starting with what we have, using it the best we can to make it better and better and better. And so that's where we are now. You know, I have the collection I have now is great. I love my collection. It's the best collection I've ever had. I have the best records I've ever had in my whole life. I have records now that I could have only dreamed of having when I was young. But who's to say I won't sell my records again? There could be a big life change and I sell them all again. It could happen. But one of the big things that I've always thought with my records is, do my records own me or do I own them? You know, you use them as your enjoyment, but if there comes a time to where you really need the money and you need the resources, there should be no hesitation to do what you need to do to provide for yourself or your family. So that's always kind of been my mentality behind having records. Like, they're important to me. I love my records. They're one of the most important things in my life, but they're not the most important thing in my life. And so I did a video a while back called Quitting Vinyl, and it was a friend of mine was getting out of it. And it's always fun to talk to people that are quitting records and getting out of it, because you know big things are happening in their life, whether it's good or it's bad. You know that there's a life change and a shift going on because people are so committed to their records. And it's not always a bad thing, and it's not always a good thing. But the fact that you are willing to give up something you really love for something else, that that I think is huge. I just wanted to do this video just to kind of talk about it. You know, a lot of times we talk about how to get more records and how to amass this huge collection that we love to have and show off. But we don't talk a lot about what's really important in life and what you would give up your records for. You know, for us, you know, April is Autism Awareness Month. Some people with autism don't like that term. Some people do. Whatever. I think that it's always good to shed light on it and talk about it, because a lot of people and families that have autism, or people that they love who have autism, it's easy for them to isolate. It's easy for them to, because not a lot of people understand them. You know, every person with autism is different. And some people say, well, I know people with autism, but what do I do? And I've heard people say, like, well, I know y'all have this that you're struggling with, but I don't know what to do. What to do in whatever circumstances to be there for people. And so, you know, I thought I'd use this video a little bit to talk about that, and just talk about how there's no shame in, if someone needs to sell their records, to just do it. And the records are just stuff. You know, it's just whether you collect records or stamps or trains or whatever people collect, it's not wrong to use that as means to get to another place or to help your family out. And like I said, again, there's no guarantee that I won't sell my records again. It could definitely happen. I go through and sell things all the time. I think it's important to not be so attached to them that you can't give them up. I think that's a really dangerous place to be, to where you're so attached that they mean more to you than anything, and they end up holding you back in life. So I think that it's always good to evaluate why you have what you have and what they mean to you and their rightful place and your priorities in life. So let me know what you guys thought about this video. You know, hit me with a comment. And like I said, if you enjoy this video and you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We would really appreciate that. And follow us on Instagram at Noble Records. We would love to interact with you more down the road. So thank y'all so much for watching this video, and we will see you next time.